Thank you very much. I believe it's impossible to talk about the outcome of the Copenhagen conference without taking a quick look at the science and look at how the urgency of the efforts needed to achieve the low carbon transition translate into what we actually do, both on mitigation of and adaptation to climate change. So what about the science? I'm speaking here, I'm a lawyer, but I'm speaking as a user of climate science data and somebody who has followed the climate science development since 1989 when I worked as a young JPO for United Nations Environment Programme. I worked on protection of the ozone layer, and it's interesting to see some of the debates around climate in the light of the debates that were held on ozone layer. Because the impact of the chemicals that depleted the ozone layer was questioned, denied, sought explained by volcanic eruptions until an undeniable link was established. And that was a debate not unlike the climate debate that we have currently. It was, however, much smaller and backed with less money. Nobody questions the ozone science today, and the businesses that changed early, they were the winners in the ozone transition race. ClimateGate had preciously little attention in Copenhagen, where virtually everybody acknowledged that the global science is global. It's not only from the University of East Anglia, and scientists from all over the world have come to similar conclusions. So in my view, as a user, the science is solid. I've seen nothing that distracts from the heart of the IPCC conclusions, only reaffirmations. But that also means that as a society, we need to react fast. The Copenhagen conference was described by the Danish chair, the then Environment Minister and now EU Commissioner, and she described it at the beginning of the meeting as the last best chance to deal with climate change. Unfortunately, I believe she was right. What I was waiting for in Copenhagen was not a legal agreement, but a clear political signal that global leaders knowingly and unequivocally had committed themselves to the low carbon journey that the European Union and the UK has committed or have committed themselves to in response to the science. That failed to materialize, and unfortunately, in my view, we ended up a bit further away from that goal than we were in the run-up to Copenhagen. There was a clear signal in the Bali Plan of Action on the evidence for global warming, on the need for significant reductions, and there was a recognition of the need for those deep cuts in global emissions, and that developing country emissions should fall by at least 10 to 40% by 2020. So, in my view, Copenhagen fell well short of all of that, and therefore was to me a disappointment. But the science hasn't changed, so we need to look forward on how the low carbon journey can be achieved. Unfortunately, I don't believe that the international negotiation process is going to deliver that in the short term, not because of the flaws with the climate convention itself or the multilateral system, but because there is actually a lack of will and perhaps a greater focus on short-term interests in some countries. Unfortunately, ultimately, I believe a global low carbon agreement is needed to create a platform for a common but differentiated approach. And maybe we should stop calling it a climate treaty and change it to a low carbon treaty to avoid the connotations and debates around the climate. The initial traction and the sort of fundamental shift that is needed for the low carbon journey, I believe, will come from efforts on the ground. It will come from visionary people. It will come from businesses and from local communities. And in this process, I believe that the importance of environmental professionalism cannot be underestimated. The side events in Copenhagen showed that businesses and innovation they are on the move. The insurance industry is way ahead of a lot of other businesses in their understanding of the importance for them as a business. And it is fundamentally important that we avoid locking ourselves into future carbon emissions by making the wrong infrastructure investment strategies today. We need to make changes now for the impact to be seen in 2030 and 2050. I think this might actually be one of the most important aspects of it all, that we really think about what we do right now. We cannot wait, because it will be too late to change a trajectory of just a couple of percentage or half a percentage change every year. We really need to look at making the measures that we're using very smart, I would say. We have to make them simple. We have to make them clearly measurable. They have to be appealing to individuals. They have to be reliable and transparent. And then I believe that we must include climate change adaptation in our transition towards a low carbon future, because our mitigation decisions in that transitional process globally will decide the size of our adaptation efforts in the longer term. And with a 2-degree temperature target, we need to adapt to changes in the range of a 4-degree impact, according to DEFRA's chief scientist. And we are currently on track to much greater temperature increases. And adapting to 5 or 6 degrees average temperature change is not at all appealing, and it will be costly. Recently, the Royal Commission for Environmental Pollution launched a report on the institutional changes needed to adapt to climate change. And one of their recommendations was for professional bodies to build climate change adaptation into their accreditation schemes and to ensure that climate projection information is interpreted and used appropriately. The Society for the Environment will follow this recommendation and will ensure that chartered environmentalists have this competency, which will help businesses become more sustainable. Several institutions have pointed out that we will have a shortage of skills to meet the challenging timetable of CO2 reductions, particularly science and engineering skills. And we must address that urgently. We cannot wait for the youth to be educated and do that. It's the current professionals that have to change their approach and improve their application of their skills. But I actually also believe that we have a shortage of general environmental professionalism. Financial professionalism is a sort of secondary or second to nature, second nature to most. We all think about the bottom line when we're undertaking our activities, and we need more professionals who commit to understanding the state of technology, the importance of changing consumption, the importance to commit to sustainability in their profession. And that goes across the board. It's lawyers, accountants, teachers, bankers, journalists, and all others who are not normally seen as environmental professionals. That, in addition to the scientists and the engineers, we really need to think about the bottom line for sustainability. The absence of a clear global goal on carbon reductions at the moment has made it difficult for all environmental professionals to do this. And it is a great challenge for each individual trying to pursue this. But I want to remind us all that the low carbon transition is not the only element. It is about a more resource efficient future that leads to sustainable development. We cannot only look at the low carbon transition. And generally, we need to be much more aware of our use of resources, and going towards a low carbon transition is a good way to learn how to be sustainable. So I would like to, now that my time is up, encourage you all also to visit Society for the Environment stand just around the corner and learn more about chartered environmentalists as a contribution to the low carbon future. Thank you.